Howdy, this is Smerls, and I'm here taking this video review for you so that you can know exactly what we're dealing with here. What I've got here today is the Tomee PC Mac SNES USB controller, and basically it's a Super Nintendo controller that's been modified. If you look at the packaging, it's not all that impressive, and honestly, it could be a lot worse. I've seen a lot worse. I've done a lot worse. Let's get into it, shall we? Alright. In the box comes just the controller and the box. That's about it. So let's throw the box away and finish the review. Now, it does look a lot like the original Super Nintendo controller, and I honestly have to say that it feels pretty darn close. There are some discrepancies, and the first notable thing is there is no branding anywhere on this device, and then rightly so, because it is not made by Nintendo. It is made by Tomee, and as far as I can tell, what they did is they got a hold of the original Nintendo mold, used a slightly cheaper plastic, and slapped it all together. But do not take that to mean that this is a very cheap product. It is by any means not very cheap at all. The feel of it is rather good. It gets down the aesthetics of a Super Nintendo right down to the littlest bit of letters. The B and A button, like the original, are convex, and the X and Y buttons are concave. Now, unlike the original Super Nintendo, the start and select buttons are plastic instead of rubber. They're kind of clicky too. The D-pad is a little stiff, but it also feels very solid. The down and left seem to depress a little bit more than the up and right, but I guess, well, that's all we can deal with that. The R and L buttons, the L button feels kind of mushy, the R button feels solid, but it is a little bit clicky again. I really don't have any issue with that. The back feels fine. There are some prominent screws. I mean, they are kind of set back, so they're below flush. And the branding, where there was supposed to be licensing information, is clear, but your fingers never really touch it. I mean, unless you got your fingers all the way across the bottom there, nothing's really going to happen. The cable here is a good 4 or 5 foot cable. You just take the twist tie off, like so, and you'll get a nice 3 or 4, I'd say 4 or 5 foot cable, and it all comes into this. This is the whole point behind this device, is the 4-button, or the USB connector. Taking your, I'd say, 8-button controller plus D-pad, Super Nintendo controller, and instead of a Super Nintendo connector, have your USB connector. And they claim it is plug and play. So I've already taken the liberty of doing this, and it is. You just plug it in, Windows detects it, creates a driver for it, and there you go. There's no need to calibrate this. It's already, it calibrates perfectly fine. I tried that, and there's no need to calibrate it at all. Now that we've taken a look at the device, let's go and do a game review of it, see how it works playing games. Super Mario Brothers is going to be the first game we're going to play, and that's because I feel that it is not only a classic NES game, but it is also the definitive game to check out the buttons for classic NES play. Now, if you can see this, you'll see that, so far button pushing does work fairly well, and it doesn't seem to stick or anything, but that's just at first glance. Now, I do have a couple of problems with the buttons, not responding, but just like right here, the button wouldn't go left for some weird and stupid reason. So I just, went with it. If buttons does seem to not stick, all you have to do is hit the opposite button across from it, especially the D-pad, and it will do it. It will work again once you go back to the other side. Same thing here. What happened? I think it's mainly just because the product is brand new. The button's not used to being pressed, or it's kind of stuck or whatever. And like I said, brand new stuff. But that's enough for Super Mario. Why don't we head on over to, I believe it will be Punch-Out. Nope, Tetris. Tetris. Tetris is one of, I think, the best games made for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Mainly because it was one of the few strategy games that actually did anything for you, and it had great music. Especially this here. This song is one of my favorites. Now, Tetris is the game where you can really see, or at least feel, the difference where, it's not responding quite like the Super Nintendo would respond. When my Super Nintendo, I played this just before this, just testing out the original Super Nintendo, and I didn't seem to have any problems with the down or side buttons, but on all the ones here that you see me, hesitating a few seconds, that's because it's not pushing down. And I found after, pressing up right afterwards, it seems to work, or, just breaking in the control, more or less. Pressing up, down, left, right. After doing that for a little while, it actually starts to become more responsive. And I think that's just mainly because, the buttons are fresh. So they don't want to press as nearly as much. Yes, everybody's big classic Punch-Out going up against Glass Joe in the first round. Now, I'm not going to be fighting nearly as tough and as strong on this one, because I'm just basically showing you a little bit of gameplay here. And show you how the controller responds. Now, some of the way the controller responds came out in this video. You'll see a couple of times where I'm trying to punch up and it goes off to the side. It'll be right here. See, I'm trying to punch up and it's going off to the side. There you go. And the biggest problem was this game. Next is going to be Super Mario World. Now, I did actually figure out something about this where, basically a lot of it, what it was is, the D-pad on this is, when you push on a button, if you barely go up or down, or barely go left and right, it does depress the left or right or up or down buttons, and that's because the way this D-pad is set up, it's, very sensitive. They didn't make it forgiving like the Super Nintendo one is, and you really can't expect it to be, it's made from a third-party contractor or a third-party company, and they're just out to make a buck. They're not gonna go for the Super Nintendos all out. You don't see nearly as much of the problems in this one, but you will notice there are a couple of times where, I probably went backward when I shouldn't have, or I just plain out couldn't move. I'll shut up now so you can watch the rest of this. At the beginning of the clouds, but again, it did not work at all. And it seemed like this seemed to be intermittent throughout each game. Not nearly as bad with the NES emulator as it was with the Super NES emulator, mind you. And there concludes the gameplay of this review, and now we'll get on to how I actually feel about the product. So, in the end, what do we say about the Tomee SNES USB controller? Well, I don't know what you would say, but I would say that is a good approximation of what a Super Nintendo controller should be on the PC. Now, you're not going to always get the exact same thing you felt with the Super Nintendo. I mean, that's a completely different build process. They had slightly different molds. This is as close as you're probably going to get. The button quality isn't exactly stellar. There's nothing entirely wrong with it. I mean, it does feel similar. It's not exact, but it could be a lot worse. It plays well with emulators. Everybody will have a different experience. The experience is the D-pad isn't as forgiving as I'd like it to be. But there are other gamepads out there that are a lot worse, so I can't really knock it that much. As far as looks and aesthetics goes, it hits the mark 100%. And some people are going to actually take a regular SNES controller and put a USB plug on it. While that is great and you're getting the actual feel of the Super Nintendo, if you're just looking for a close approximation, this is the best way to go. All the hard legwork is done for you. It is pretty much just plug and play. You don't have to set up any drivers or anything. So on the Smerals scale from 1 to 10, I would give this a 7. And hopefully we will return with another video review.